And now, Mr. Serling.
Next week, you'll drive with Miss Inger Stevens, who starts out on what begins as a vacation and ends as a desperate flight. She begins her trip next week on the Twilight Zone. And you'll be with her when she meets the Hitch-Hiker. We hope you'll be alongside. Good night.
Man, the days when you could smoke on TV.
Yeah.
I like how he's addressing the audience that clearly doesn't exist there. So.
Yeah.
So there actually is an episode where sometimes Serling pops up during the episode to do narration.
Oh, wow.
And sometimes he's there physically, sometimes not. There's an episode he pops up at the end to do narration, and one of the main characters addresses him because he has this supernatural power, and it's like, whoa, that like blows your mind because that's the only time a character interacts with
Is he
Serling.
still smoking a cigarette then? I just like to think he's just
Yeah.
at all times.
I hope so. Yeah.
It's for my...
He's a Stephen King character. He has to be smoking all times.
All right, there was a very thin teaser.
Not a lot there.
Yeah, there wasn't much there. All I get is that it's going to be a suspense, kind of a thriller episode. So, I mean, somebody called out Hitchcock at the beginning of our last review. So that's kind of what I'm expecting here. Not a lot of science, not a lot of fiction, but hopefully we'll get a tight 22.
What was with the random...
Yeah.
I'm going to do the hitching.
The
motion?
Hitchhiker.
Yeah, I know what that is,
He's
yeah,
actually-
but it was just very bizarre.
Well, it's meant to be like a kind of a creepy thing of like, look,
Yeah.
creepy hitchhiker.
Mr. Serling, we've got nothing else. Okay, I'll just do this. I'll do this. No,
By the way, apropos of nothing, how many of you guys have seen Psycho?
you've
1960
seen it
Psycho.
once, yeah.
I actually have a Hitchcock collection down there, but I've never actually sat down and watched it. I should do, really.
Okay, because this is about 6 months before Psycho.
Oh, wow.
Oh, nice.
Okay. Pre-ratings then. What do we expect? Stars.
I'm probably going to go with a cautious 7. I'm open to being proven wrong, but I feel like this isn't maybe going to strike my fancy as much as the more sci-fi, more literature, more stage-based one we just had, but I am so ready to be proven wrong. I would love to love this episode.
Okay.
I'm optimistic.
I might go 6. I might go 6. I think you're right. I feel like we've had a stunner of an opener with The Lonely. I feel like this second one is going to be I don't know, maybe we'll see. I'm surprised.
Maybe more of the period is kind of what I'm
that's
expecting.
true. That's true. Dan?
I feel like Serling half-assed it. There's no props. No promise of anything that tickles my fancy here. I'm going low. I'm going 4.
You're going for... Can we constantly refer to Serling as like the 5th member of this here now? Like, Serling, what the fuck are you doing? Like, come on. What was this all about? All right.
I like how you have no faith in my ability to pick watchable episodes. 4, Dan.
Hey, you prove us wrong. Okay.
Prove me wrong. Yep.
Let's get to the episode.
This is the dimension of imagination. It is an area which we call the Twilight Zone.
Welcome everyone to Beyond Imagination, our intrepid trek through.
This is gonna age like shit if we don't go with that as a title.
No, that's
Come with me.
someone said that's going to be the
see.
title. That's going to be the title.
We're all beyond imagination.
Actually, Willy Wonka's scarier than this episode.
Yeah.
So.
Actually, my son watched Wonka today, and he watched about half and went, "No, I can't do it." So, yeah, there was parts of that he didn't like.
I'm a little disappointed. My kids refuse to watch the original from the 70s. They
Oh, no,
say
he
the
loves that
trailer's
one.
They say the trailer too scary. They won't sit for
Ah.
it. So
Pure imagination. No one knows
Is the
where
trailer
we're going.
just a bit in the tunnel?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Anyway, welcome to our review of some hand-picked, finely selected Twilight Zone episodes as picked by our esteemed colleague Automaton 2000. This edition we are going through The Hitch-Hiker, one lady's journey through madness, torment, and despair. Fun fact starters of this episode was sourced from a radio play produced for a summer replacement series called Suspense in September 1942, starring one young Orson Welles. So this has already got a bit of pedigree behind it. What did we think about this episode? Also, why did you pick this one? Because you've handpicked these. In the last one we had The Lonely and more of a sci-fi bend. What drew you to pick this one as a sort of a Twilight Zone primer?
So I thought, I kind of I grabbed, all right, I went through the list. Could I finish the sentence, please? I went through the list of all the episodes. I thought, all right, which are the ones that stick out in my mind or the ones that I want to share with you guys? I pulled them all out and then I put them into buckets. And this bucket was sort of a primer of what Twilight Zone is about. This is their attempt to do suspense/thriller. And I asked these guys before we started, I said, have you seen Psycho, the Hitchcock 1960 movie? And there are a lot of similar elements. There's a scene in that movie where the main character, the actress, has stolen some money. She's driving away, and they do the scene in the car with her, like wrestling with her thoughts. And it's very similar to this. It came out, I think they started filming 4 months after this one did. But it's interesting, there's the name, The Hitch-Hiker, and there's the fact, I might be stealing your fun fact here, but Hitchcock tried to buy the rights for this play for $2,000, I believe, and they turned him down. So, like you mentioned, the story had been out for a while, but obviously that piqued his interest. And so the parallels there were fun, but I think you get that classic Twilight Zone twist at the end, which kind of opens up the world and asks a lot more questions than the first 20 minutes did, admittedly.
It definitely had that kind of Hitchcock vibe to it, not just like the shooting style, the era of that time, but it had a kind of almost like hidden gravitas you expect from sort of like a Hitchcock film. You go and like, something's up here, we know something's wrong. What's the hitch here? to coin a phrase.
So you know what? I have to. I'm going to be honest, but I'm going to be a bit negative here. This episode shows its hand way too early. That dialogue with the mechanic was way too heavy-handed with like oh man, if there'd been you would have been going for a hearse. And I'm like, okay, she's dead. I'm like, maybe that's like a degree of like, I've watched too much shit like this where it's like the instant I hear dialogue, I'm like, oh, you're dead. But I feel like there's just... Because the entire thing is a mediation on the acceptance of death and running away from death and fear of death. And I feel like there's a lot of time spent being afraid of it, about 30 seconds of accepting it, and then the episode ends. And I would have liked it if it had taken a more sort of character bent than the one it went for, where it was just like, suspense. I'm like, okay.
We were waiting.
You can't give me just 25 minutes of suspense. I need character moments. I need a reason to care about the character who is in suspense. Like, if we're talking Hitchcock, we can't really avoid it when we're talking about Twilight Zone. There's a really great conversation here, a talkie talk. You've probably heard about it, and it's about the bomb under the table. Are you familiar with this concept?
Wait a minute, hold on. Yes, now I am.
Yeah. So the concept is like, it's this thing that Hitchcock talks about in regards to tension, suspense, and like informing the audience. And he talks about the concept of, if you set up a scene, and it's just 5 minutes of talking, and at the end of the 5 minutes, nothing has really happened. It's just two characters talking, and then a bomb goes off. It's like, okay, what was the point? But if you set the very beginning of the scene and you establish that there is a bomb under the table and none of the characters know about, but you do, suddenly those 5 minutes become the most tense 5 minutes of your life because you know a bomb is about to go off. And I feel like that this episode would really benefit from that advice, because I can see that the bomb is under the table, but the episode is acting like the bomb is not under the table. The episode is shown me, but it's not trusting me with that knowledge, as it were. And it's like, I know from like moment one that she's dead, and like the suspense isn't really doing it for me. I would rather if they leaned into the tragedy, or like more of a mediation on the 5 stages of grief as seen by the person who's died, rather than just, it's a creepy man.
Yeah, so
I won't deny that he's creepy, but you know.
To recap the story very briefly, because I feel like we will do this more for the Twilight Zone stuff than we do for the Trek stuff, as it's more an unknown field. I feel like people might just be listening to this as a kind of like, should I get into this? Okay, maybe I should. So, Nan Adams, our protagonist lady, is side of the road. She meets the eponymous mechanic who fixes her car, and she drives off all the way, seeing the same hitchhiker across the entire journey. Eventually going mad. She picks up a sailor after trying to get some gas. The sailor goes, "No, you're crazy," and and buggers off out the car, and eventually it turns out that she tries to phone her mother for an edge of comfort, and she goes, no, her mother's in a mental hospital because her daughter died 6 months ago, and then you realise, oh no, I'm dead all along, and gets into the car, and the hitchhiker's in the car saying, you're going the same way as me, and you go, oh well, maybe that was death guiding her into the oblivion. I feel like you're kind of right on this. I like the concept. The Sixth Sense is like the kind of the poster child for this kind of story. It's like, oh, you were dead all along, and I feel like that you needed the sailor character in there to be a bit more of a kind of, to replace the kind of small child in there. If he turned around and said, I see dead people all the time, and go, oh right, you're just crazy then. That would have been cool. But yeah, there was a lot of suspense, a lot of driving, a lot of meandering in this story.
The this episode reveals itself, and it's very different from the other one that we had recently watched, The Lonely, that one seems to have been certainly an adaptation of a sci-fi concept or treatment, but really handled in a way that presents itself for the TV media better. This one really shows that it was just in this case a play that was really translated. That I think teleplay credit is given to Rod Serling, but it seems like he really just took whatever the original material was and treated most of the episode as a voiceover that reads directly off the script. So of course, it's going to be difficult to present a character who is dying. I guess what we're seeing here in the 22-minute episode is her last few seconds of life. Her life, instead of the past flashing before her eyes, now we've got everything that she's trying to do to struggle with her mortality in the last few moments of her life, and so none of that really, unfortunately, comes across though, and so we've got a whole lot of voiceover. The other problem I have is that the direction for this episode is very flat. There's not a lot of creativity done. So one thing that we enjoyed in The Lonely was some of the camera shots and some of the real the way that the episode was filmed to show off the environment. And here we just get a lot of interior shots of the car. It's not particularly claustrophobic. The person directing the episode doesn't really have a good handle on suspense. I think maybe Hitchcock would have been the right person to really portray this and give it the maybe the honor that it deserves, because it's an interesting concept. I enjoy.
Sorry to interrupt. What's the Hitchcock film with the guy that's in his room and he's broke his leg, he's got the telescope?
Rear Window.
That is Rear Window. Yeah, I was thinking Rear Window.
Jenks.
Yeah, hey, that kind of gave me a bit of vibe of that. But sorry to go on.
Of course, yeah. But talk about a bottle episode. That's exactly what that is. Yeah, but no, right. You're exactly right. And so this episode plays into the American fascination with cars at the time, and so what if the last few moments of a woman's life played out in a car, and how can we frame this? I feel like most of that fell flat, and where this episode really took off for me is when she starts to have a little bit of she's now struggling with fear that presents itself as she's picked up the sailor, and she's not sure whether to trust him or not, but he has to be better than this unknown, and she's struggling with trying to get people to believe her, and like the gas station owner that won't even respond to her. And now that's bringing in notes of her potentially being a victim, being alone on this cross-country trip. And I felt like there was a lot of unexplored territory there, which I probably would have enjoyed better than what we actually got. What do you got, Stars?
You know what? I have to leap on that point, because you actually just made it, because I brought up, I would have liked it. This was more about her accepting death. And I just realized that the episode kind of does that, but it crams it all into, because the 5 stages of death are denial, bargaining, despair, anger, and then acceptance, right? And I feel like all of that is crammed into the last 5 minutes. Like from the conversation with the sailor where he's like, you're fucking crazy, to the telephone call is the 5 stages of grief. And the 20 minutes before that doesn't really, it's just not 20 minutes of denial. And I feel like that's the reason why it falls flat for me. And it would have been way more interesting if we had just like spread it all out and just had way more. Because like I feel like the most interesting insight into this character, she's a cipher more than anything else, is when she suddenly becomes manipulative, which is that's obviously the bargaining stage of acceptance of death. I'll do something for you if you just you give me the comfort of knowing I'm on my own. except it's like that's the most characterization she gets. Is like, and I'm like, okay, cool. There's drama here. There's like an interaction between characters. There's frisson. There is tension. There is an element of fear between another character, and then it's gone. And then it goes on to the telephone call, which is arguably the best part of the entire episode, but it's also the very end of the episode. And I feel like everything leading up to that point is just a little bit too sparse. Like, as you say, I think this plays better in radio, actually.
Yeah, you even got the radio aspect of the train honking its horn and bearing down on the stalled car on the train tracks, and that's a very radio play bit of drama there too.
Also,
so going into this, I probably watched it years ago, so I wouldn't necessarily remember my first impressions. But yeah, you say you watched it, and the first thing you think, okay, she's already dead. My thought was she's marked for death. And he is the Grim Reaper. That's pretty obvious. But we're going to see, okay, how does she die? Not that she already has. And I think for me that added tension because you get to the gas station with the old man. Okay, does something happen there? The sailor pops up and scares her. Oh, maybe he's the one that does it. And so for me that tension remained because I'm not a big thriller guy anyway, so I haven't watched a lot of that, which is funny if I'm the only one to have watched Psycho. But so yeah, that worked for me, but yeah, I admit on the rewatch, I'm like, boy, they go 20 minutes before something actually happens. So I think because the phone call stood out so much in my mind, that sort of plastered over that a little bit.
It does take up like the majority of the episode, like in terms of weight and like plot development. It just basically takes the entire 20 minutes and goes, "This is it," and you go, "Oh, right," and kind of.
So interesting that you mentioned you thought it was the Grim Reaper, but it turns out it's a different character, and so I think that the man in the suit is the ferryman. So you'll notice that. She finally gets to acknowledge and surrender to death after she takes her coin and puts it into the phone. And then you find out that she'll be the hitchhiker to him, and he's the one that's going to be carrying her.
Yeah, that's nice.
In fact, I feel like if you wanted to, like, we were talking about how like the directorial style's a bit flat. That's a good little bit of directorial flair that I kind of doubt would have been in the radio play because I don't know how that plays on radio. Maybe you just have the sound of the coin going in, whatever. But I feel like it would have been like a good way of taking advantage of the visual medium if he had been the one driving and she got in the back seat, and then you kind of have a visual representation of the loss of control and the acceptance of that instead of her flicking back. Like, guess what? That's a really nice little, that's great visual shorthand. But in terms of like the overall theming of the story and what it's about, I feel like it would have been more effective if he had just been in.
I'm a sucker for a mirror pan shot. She adjusts the mirror. No, it's somebody there.
Oh
like,
yeah,
you see it coming
great.
a mile away, but it still looks good. I love it.
Yeah.
A couple bits of trivia.
Go on.
Adam Williams, the sailor's actor, was actually a decorated World War II fighter pilot. So this was, I think, was one of his first acting
Not a
gigs.
Navyman.
Is that why the subtitle said they were driving him back to the hangar then?
Sorry, did I say Air Force or Navy fighter pilot? Yeah.
Navy.
Which, by the way, that
Like
was such a fun
seaplanes.
little twist because he gets in the car with her, and he's scooching as close as he possibly can.
Just
and
staring
like I
at
said,
her.
with my mindset, I'm thinking, okay, is he going to be like the one that does her in? And she's so batshit crazy. Like he's
Yeah, I do like that.
aching to get out of there just minutes later. So I thought that was a fun turnabout.
And I love that he goes back for his shoes. That's such a human moment. That's fun.
Dude, his exo would bust his ass if he didn't come back with his shoes. So
You don't understand. That was his crazy broad. She was dead.
now that's a different Twilight Zone episode. So yeah, and my other piece of trivia, which actually I think will change your view on the episode if you know it ahead of time. The lead actress, Ingrid Stevens, attempted to commit suicide on New Year's Day, 1959, just 6 months before filming this episode. She took dozens of sleeping pills and pneumonia. She later died 10 years later en route to the hospital from a combination of drugs and alcohol, ruled a suicide. So I'm seeing a lot of, just if I try to put myself in the actresses, not the characters, the actresses' point of view, playing this out, running away from your demons actually adds a level that,
I mean, this isn't the era.
The
where-
episode doesn't deserve credit for it, but I think in real life that is an interesting.
mentioned it
Well, this is the kind of thing. Is that I feel like when it comes to bringing the emotional, she's absolutely capable of doing it. She has like a scary intensity, and the way she flips from absolutely terrified to "I like you," like okay, that's some fucking
Yeah.
Hitchhiker shit. but she doesn't get enough chance to do that. She's stuck in. Yeah, you're going to hate me for this. She's stuck in one gear for the majority of the episode.
Monotone gear. We find out at the end the reason why she's traveling cross country, and it's not really established in the beginning. But there's a lot of questions that I had at the mid part of the episode about who exactly is she? Is she running from somebody? Is she running from a father or a husband who is abusive? And is she trying to find the next man in the sequence? And they actually call that out in the dialogue, which I give this writing, this treatment, a lot of credit for. And ultimately, that's not what the case is here. But they do make a really fine point on letting her anxiety breathe and letting the audience think that, hey, maybe there is something about a relationship here that she's trying to escape from. It turns out not to be that, unfortunately, but it's a good beat.
There's,
I wonder what kind of a car was she driving? Was it actually a Ford Prefect?
I don't think
it
so.
might
I
have
think
been a
that was
Buick.
a Chevy, no?
One of the goofs is they actually switch cars in between certain
did they?
shots. So
Okay.
Idle, you've been constantly interrupted.
Yeah, and I've kind of forgotten my point now. I forgot what I was going to say.
Oh, no.
No, it's fine. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I know. I remember my point now. Yeah. This is before a time when mental health is even a word in the dictionary. Most women at the time, if they were acting strange, would just said, "You have hysteria. Here, smoke some cigarettes. You'll be fine." Like, not gonna lie, that was medical opinion around that time. So, yeah. So
or lobotomies, God.
Like, yeah, all lobotomies. Yeah. Jesus Christ. So, like,
Yeah.
the idea of, we can discount at the time of someone, from us in a modern 21st century perspective, looking at it going like, yeah, she's having some sort of mental episode. She needs to sit down and talk to someone and get some help. But, like, if you're watching it in the 50s and with the 50s mindset, you're thinking, gosh, she's panicked with fear. Like, you see it from a different perspective. You think, like, she's hysterical. She's panicked with fear. Like, there's obviously something malicious chasing her that's forcing, or some demonic satanic spirit that's forcing her to be like this, when actually the truth is she's dead.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go on to our bread. You didn't get that, did you? No, let me turn my things back on. Right, I need to have that on a different isolated channel for you guys. Let's have our bread of the moment. Otto, what is the bread? Explain the bread.
Oh, you got to watch episode 1 if you want to know. But the short version is, what is the essence of the episode? What is the one shot, the one character, the one line that will stick in your head when you think about this episode, or don't think about it a few months, years from now?
What is your bread?
I'll go first.
Oh yeah, go on. Here you go.
Oh, no, I've always got one. I know he's already. I mean, you.
Go.
Okay. I think mine would probably be the excellent delivery on when she's walking away from the telephone. It's like, I think I understand now. And she repeats it, and it's like the delivery on that. Like, I really liked that ending line of, like, I feel like a plug has been pulled out, and it's like it's almost like all the life has been drained out of her all of a sudden. Like, that's a very evocative way of doing it. It's like, oh no, like someone literally pulled a giant stopper, and now all my guts and my life and my emotions are pulling out. And it's hard to do. Like, guess what? There's such a thing as bad monotone, and then there's good monotone, right? Like, in terms of acting, there's bad monotone, which is like, I am trying to, But then there's like the I am emotionally dead inside, and this is just my body on automated. Like, that's a little bit harder to do, and especially hard to do modulating down from a manic performance, where it's like, guess what? You get yourself into a certain mindset. We understand that the actress was like, having like severe struggles of her own, and then it's just like, no, slow, calm, and it's like that's the most effective part for me. Like, that last 5 bits, like those last 5 minutes, if the rest of the episode could handle that amount of emotional intensity, or was more like the bits with her and the sailor, I would like it a lot more. But that's what's going to stick with me. Yeah.
I'm going to jump in and say, like, my bread moment was
Bread.
Definitely. So it's just like the Muppets. It's like freaking like the Swedish chef in the background.
Yep.
I forgot what it was now. No, you distracted me too much.
Sorry.
I think the thing that stood out for me was the introduction of the hitchhiker at the start. And like you just, because I was expecting like, okay, there's going to be this creepy hitchhiker that either gets in the car with her or follows her around. I didn't know what quite was going to happen, but like straight away, pan over the mechanic, there's a guy there with his thumb out, and it like immediately the tense music, the moments there. I quite liked how they automatically through the direction and the camera work portrayed him as like, and her reaction as well to like, oh, that's a hitchhiker. And like at first she like looks away and you're kind of like, oh, she's been a bit of a dick there, like, you know, she's just blanking him. But in a kind of 1950s Americans, you know, or even these days, you know, you got your class people that are blindsided by class saying I can't be associated with these kind of people. You kind of get the inference that this guy's not quite on the level. Like you kind of, at least from her perspective, like you feel the fear coming through from her that this guy isn't quite that way. So that kind of stuck out with me. That like even early on, we're like, oh wow, this is going to be the antagonist of the episode, even though he really wasn't. How about you, Otto?
Now, see, I don't think Dan will go for this because I think he's too mature and nuanced. So I'll take the real basic one. Obviously, what stuck in my head is the phone call. Like I said, I wasn't expecting her to be dead. I was expecting her to be marked for death. So to find out that she already was, that carried the episode for me because I like those classic Twilight Zone twists, and that twist did work for me.
Dan?
Yeah, so mine is the payoff at the end of the whole episode where she looks in her rearview mirror. I believe you're going my way. She's accepted him, and she doesn't even have a real reaction. It's just, this is okay. This is happening now. So that image will stick with me. Seeing Jack Webb or whoever he was, he looked just like Jack Webb. Seeing it in the rearview mirror.
Yeah, it does.
It's all Serling. It's all Serling all the way down. It's just a different mask. Just got to look for the brand of cigarette in his hand.
You know what? I think I would have liked it if it had been Serling. I feel like that would have a nice little wink at the camera.
Cool. Dude, that would be so
And I feel
great.
like the way that he's been like carrying himself off in these intros is like this kind of avuncular, but like ever so slightly like off kilter and creepy. Like I feel like he'd be able to handle this role a little bit nicely because like
he's sort of the marionette.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's the puppeteer. It was his fault all along. Serling! How could you? All right, let's go to our last 5 minutes.
Well, if that's the best they could do, this should last about 5 minutes.
5 minutes. We will retrace our steps and figure out what's going on.
You've got 5 minutes. Do it.
Working theories are fine, Jordy, but we need a working solution in about 5 minutes.
We need another 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay, what were your... If you were to rewrite the last 5 minutes of this episode, how would you do it? I'm going to take the lead here and go first, and I'm going to say... I'm going to go with the humorous option. All this tension has happened. All this, you know, she's panicking all the way, seeing this guy hitchhiking all the way. He's had his thumb out all the way, and she gets to the phone, and you just hear this... And he runs up, and he knocks on the window and goes, I'm here to talk about your car's extended warranty.
Jail!
Sorry, I couldn't help myself. And on that note, Dan,
Good
come
to
on.
laugh.
What would be your last 5 minutes?
Well, it may not fill up a whole 5 minutes, and it completely undoes my bread moment. But I would like to remove nearly everything after the very moment that she learns that she's dead, and a cut back to the scene of the accident. And so all we see is her car smoking, and then the car behind her, somebody exits the car, and it's the sailor. He comes up to try to help her. The man that was running the gas station comes out of his house and comes out to try to assess the scene. So all these players that have shown up throughout the course of the entire episode wind up being people that are on the scene at the point of her death and, you know, around her, so that part of her last few moments of consciousness are seeing and taking in these people, and we realize that she's been reframing the last few moments of her life into this 22-minute play that we've just seen, to give a little bit more context to things and a little bit more understanding to the viewer of what exactly has played out and why we've been introduced to these people throughout the course of the whole episode.
Yeah. Can I go?
Yeah, go.
So I'm probably going to have to dial it back because I was actually I watched the timestamp really fastidiously for these to go. Okay, where's my moment? I'm going to have to dial it back to about 7 minutes behind. And I would dial it back to the very first time she swerves the car to avoid the hitchhiker, and I would have it be that the sailor is like, "Yeah, I did see him," and that freaks him out way more. And it still plays out the same way. But instead of just her, he's at the telephone booth as well. It's like, okay, they both died in the crash, and like maybe maybe he's her boyfriend, and like they both died in the car, but they've been going on their own separate journeys through death. And then it's like, you seem kind of familiar. Like, what have I seen? It's like, no, I'm gonna say they or whatever. And then like they have a moment of reconnection, and there's a moment of human warmth where maybe they hold each other's hands as they go off, and he drives them away.
I felt like
I also wouldn't mind.
Sorry, no, I felt like at the twist, the twist you find out she's dead, like, and then it sort of you go back and think about the interaction with the sailor and the man that runs the gas station. Like, it's like feels like those don't quite fit in the same narrative, unless, like you say, they are dead as well, and they're on, kind of life on Mars, and they're all dead all the way,
Yeah, I love Life on Mars as that treatment of that, and Ashes to Ashes is like, it's part of what inspired it. But it's like, I feel like that would add a more human element to it, which I feel like you need to, like, it's literally a thing about death. You need to have a tragic human element to it, I feel like, in order to really like empathize with it. And it's like, it's all treated in very broad strokes. Whereas I feel like part of the reason why The Lonely works so was because you get a lot of very specific character things about Corey that make him work, whereas like Nan is very thinly sketched, and I feel like having it be a relationship that gives like a human warmth and like even like a spot of tenderness, a little bit of hope, a little bit of optimism, I'd like that. I also would guess what, I'm a sucker for this trope. I am tired of death as the silent stalker. I love death as like, the way Sandman treats death. There's like
the stand-up comedian.
Like, guess what? I'm here to gently shepherd you through. Guess what? I've done this like 16 trillion times before. I'm going to do it another 16 trillion times. But I have endless empathy for you. And so you misunderstood what I was. I was patient. What you thought I was like, malevolence. That was patience. I'm here for you. And maybe he holds her hand. And it's like they all just like a moment of human connection and like a bit more optimism. I think would really reframe this episode and make me like. I like the ending as is, as just like a emotionally cold bit. But I feel like if you wanted to play it a different way, that'd be a very valid way to do it.
Stars, I'm about to blow your mind. So we were playing around with a protagonist named Nan Adams. It's an anagram. It's an anagram of Sandman.
Oh, you're right, actually.
All right.
Metallica fan, then. Auto, go on.
Enter Sandman.
You can tell we're still new on this series because you guys are talking. I'm thinking, boy, we're all trying to rewrite the end of this episode. And they're like, oh, that's the bit. That's okay. So, yeah, dial back to... All right, the sailor gets in the car. She doesn't freak him out yet. For some reason, she pulls over, makes the call. She wants to let her mom know when she's going to be there or whatever. She finds out she's dead. We get the dead man walking back to the car. Now, at that point, she starts to freak him out a little bit. Yeah. We do the swerve to hit the hitchhiker, and we crash. Everything goes to black. When Fade comes up, the sailor is alone in the car. He's back at the beginning getting his tire fixed. And he turns around and sees the hitchhiker. And it's this time loop purgatory. Someone must always be playing out this episode on their own.
That's good. I like that. That's good.
See, now I had time to think about these ahead of time, so that's why I always go last. I don't want to steal anyone's idea, but I do like that because that introduces like a second layer of supernatural element to it that
you expect from
the
Twilight Zone. No, you can get a phone call from Hitchcock's ghost offering you $2,000 soon. Okay, let's go over to our ratings.
I can show you my rating code.
Schiller rating 3.5.
Associational rating norm -3.
That's much too low a rating.
I'm just not accustomed to seeing an unsatisfactory rating on a member of my crew.
Mind your own business. For your information, I have a very high efficiency rating.
Ensign, I will not have you address me in that tone of voice.
What do you want? Violins?
Violins? Yes. So, Dan, what is our rating criteria for this episode?
So a bit of an inside joke, but I'm going to go for it anyways because we all watch the show together ahead of our review of the show, and in watching the show, we also have some subtitles that show up. So our rating of this episode will be how many poorly ported Portuguese subtitles out of 10.
What can I spell Portuguese? There we go. Okay. Otto, you run the show. You can go.
Maybe I better. Someone else go.
Okay, Stars.
All right. If I recall, my pre-rating was a 6 or a 7. Can you remind me?
Your pre-rating was.
I think you were a 7.
7, yes.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to. I think that's actually kind of bang on. I was kind of hoping for a bit more, because like there was a lot of real meat to what was going on in the Lonely and that kind of stuff. My expectation is really high. This one is just like, it's very much more of the time, and it's like, I don't feel like it's just a little bit dated in places. I feel like it could have done with a bit more characterization. There are other versions of this twist that have been, and it's also a case of like that heavy-handed dialogue at the beginning was just a little bit too much. Like, he might as well flash up a cue card saying, "You are dead. Do you want to get drinks later?" ? And it's just like, it just kind of killed the vibe for me, because I was just waiting for the twist that would carry me through the next half of the episode, and then it didn't happen. Then it waited until the last 5 minutes, and I'm like, okay, cool. That's the part of the episode I really, really like. The rest of it is just kind of there. So yeah, it'd be 6 poorly ported Portuguese subtitles out of 10 from me.
All right, Dan.
I pre-rated at a 4, and the reason why is I thought that Rod Serling was kind of full of crap with the way he farted out his teaser on it. And you know what? It turns out it wasn't his story. He had just adapted it, and this was really kind of a mid-season. Twilight Zone is an anthology show. We take all of these various stories, we collect them, and we present them to you, the viewer. And so in that case, this isn't completely dissimilar from other episodes that we'll watch, but it also came across as one that was really just kind of put in the hands of people that are good at TV but not auteurs. So the artistry of what makes a really great episode of television great was absent from this. That said, I'll be a little forgiving because it did have some interesting thoughts and twists to it, so I'm going to upgrade to a 5.
You're a 5. Auto, do you want to go, or shall I? Have you got? Go on.
Yeah, I was actually, if I pre-rated it, would have been higher than my actual rating. It's just the twist is what's stuck in my head, and I think that saved it for me, just because of what I was thinking going in. But like I said, the first half dozen episodes were my attempt at a sampler platter for what you can expect, and they don't do suspense a ton actually in Twilight Zone. But I thought this was a decent one to pull for that. And I went back through the list of all the episodes we're going to review. This is my least favorite by a margin, by a chunk. Mm-hmm. So I'll give this 5 poorly ported Portuguese subtitles out of 10. I did love the twist. I'm actually eager to get to the other episodes, because I should have put this a little further in the watch along. But I think it's a fine.
It's good to have a flavor. It's good to have a flavor.
Yeah. Now we have kind of, like, guess what? This is our benchmark, because I feel like all of us are kind of setting this as this is perfectly middle of the road. Okay,
we're tuning. We're establishing where the needles sort of fall.
We're getting our aerials. We're working out where we want to go.
I will go with a 4. I feel like the twist didn't really earn its place, considering what else happened in the episode, which, to be honest, wasn't a lot. There was a lot of her driving, and a lot of her driving nowhere. With a few interactions, kind of just felt like a bit of filler. Like, what was the point in the sailor interaction other than to enhance their psychoses? But you could have done that with the gas station owner or with the mechanic. Like, these things had already been played out. It was just another bit of like, we need 10 minutes here because it's a 25-minute episode, so let's have that. It just felt stretched. I did like the twist. I did like the play on a manic psychosis. I did like the creepiness of the Hitch-Hiker, which ended up being not so much of a malevolent entity. But I will settle on not my favourite. I do like a suspense. Don't get me wrong. It's not a shun on the genre, but I don't think this handled it very well. So this is my 4 poorly ported Portuguese subtitles out of 10.
Can I throw out another 5 last 5 minutes instead?
Yeah, go for it.
As well, also. Instead of the Hitch-Hiker being death, it turns out you get like the flashback to the scene of her death. And you get a slow pan over to another car that was in the collision, and it's him. And then they both have to drive off into endless perpetuity. Yeah. And so I felt like that would be another decent little twist on it. Because I like the idea of recontextualizing everyone in the story as like people who were at the scene of the death, etc. I like that. And like having, I feel like he's given gravitas but not a lot to do. I feel like just giving him something to do would be nice.
And as they're sailing off into the heavenly sunset, she turns to him and she goes, "Oh, so what did you do in your life?" And he goes, "I used to sell extended warranties for cars."
No, you had your shot. Knock it off.
Okay, I'm out of it. All right, I'm out of it. We're out of it. Okay, thank you for watching. We'll be back with another Twilight Zone episode very soon. Keep an eye on Discord channel, YouTube, and all that, and keep hitching. We'll see you next time. Bye.